snapper's been an interesting scenario with the situation first, other than the tires being two tires losing air. This little plate was screwed in here to limit the throttle to not be able to engage the choke and go full throttle. So that led on to a little more suspicion reasonably that this whole carburation and linkage area for the choke, which wouldn't engage, plus this was bent. So literally this linkage here was bent out of the way, so even if the choke could, when I removed the plate, still wasn't catching. The governor was bent back into this little recess back here, so the governor wasn't even able to move in its full range of motion. So I was hoping the governor wasn't sheared off or broken on the inside. It looks like it ultimately wasn't. And these tabs, I'm not sure. I still have to go back and tune everything per the operator's service manual, and the tab back here also. First, so the procedure is to go through the what is it, the low or high, idle, I think idle or low, or what do they call it, no load, and then the high end. So I was able at least to tune the carburetor roughly from bending the governor linkage and adjusting the idle screw to get the system running at least, where before the only option with the throttle was full throttle or choke. So I've been able to get this down now to where I can throttle down. Carburetion's an issue. I figure it's air. This little mixture screw here I need to read into a little more and follow the procedure really first. I think it's screw all the way in, turn out an eighth of turn or something like this. I have to read again. I've never done before. And I did wind up tearing out and cleaning the solenoid, the bowl, pretty much just a gum residue was found. I took out the jets, cleaned that real good, and there's definitely gum in all the jets, and I wonder with this air mixture screw, there might be components of the carburetor I didn't get into to clean well enough. There's gum on the choke butterfly valve, and the rear butterfly valve didn't seem too bad, so it didn't look too lacquered or whatnot. The magnets were rusty on the flywheel. I had to re-gap and clean the block, or the block, the magneto bottom, the magneto front, and where the screws go. I cleaned the spark plug connection, and I still need to check the gap of the spark plug, but after going through that with the replacement of the starter, because I didn't know how to take off this Bendix, because the other starter, the pinion, or not pinion, but the gear was, yes it is a pinion, the gear was sticking. And this one's kind of sticking too, so I almost think I'm going to need to replace this also, but I figured out how to do this with a socket. Pterodactyl videos were really good on detailing screwdriver and a socket. I do notice there's one tooth broke on the flywheel. Shouldn't be an issue. Other than that, having to replace the sheared key for the flywheel and the crank. I did notice opening up the valves, they were definitely out of specification, the gap, the rocker arms. And the recent finding was, I verified, I tried coming out yesterday, I did wind up swapping them back and forth. The aluminum push rod and the steel push rod were swapped in the wrong locations. So this had the aluminum on the exhaust and the steel on the intake, so I swapped those yesterday. I'm going to pull those back out just to make sure they're clean, because it's pretty windy and it started to rain. And then I'm going to go ahead and replace and gap those, make sure everything's lubed up well. And I'm thinking while I have the spark plug out, I'm also going to verify the gap on that. just to make sure I tweak that to where is specification. I did put in a fuel shutoff line. I did run cleaner through the line and until it ran clean. This fuel was definitely really yellow. Other than that, I'm kind of wondering if the muffler's got a little issue. There's a little squeaky, whiny noise there. I almost want to take this, I think it's like a spark arrestor or a heat shield off just to see how it runs without that. Other than that, I think that's about where I left off. So we'll see with the swapping of the push rods and the regapping, if that takes away a little high-pitched noise. That sounded like it's coming out of the muffler, but it might have been because the exhaust. It might be, I know I gapped them wrong. So for some reason, looking at assuming the push rods were in the correct location when I removed them and reinstalled them, I gapped those wrong. So hopefully I didn't overheat the exhaust, 'cause I guess being too tight wouldn't allow for the exhaust fumes to escape, and that could overheat some things. I'm thinking, at least it seems to make sense. Other than that, remember to bring the camera out and do a little video update. That's about where I'm at.